Yeah, that's the information that we have gotten. There might be new information coming out.
An old video tied to Ilhan Omar is blowing up again, and this time it's landing differently. People are no longer brushing it off or explaining it away. They're asking real questions about loyalty, accountability, and whether this rhetoric ever should have been ignored. The outrage didn't come out of nowhere. It's been building for years, fueled by patterns, associations, and statements that keep resurfacing. When elected officials dismiss concerns as hate instead of addressing them head-on, distrust grows. Today, we're going to walk through what resurfaced, why people are reacting so strongly, and why this moment feels like a turning point rather than another media cycle.
This morning you said the president trafficked.
What is wrong with you?
Well, I'm asking you a question about your tweet. You had a tweet saying the president trafficked in hate.
Yes, I tweeted. There's a response. You can run that and have a nice day.
Why can't you explain more what you meant to say?
That old exchange with the reporter matters more than people admit. When Ilhan Omar gets asked about her own words and responds with hostility instead of clarity, viewers notice. That reaction tells a story on its own. Public officials answer tough questions for a living. Dismissing a reporter and walking away signals discomfort, not confidence. Fast forward to today, and that same pattern keeps resurfacing. Old videos circulate because unresolved questions linger. People feel brushed off. They feel talked down to. That breeds frustration, and frustration turns into outrage when accountability never follows. Now layer in the broader context. Minnesota sits at the center of one of the largest fraud scandals in recent history. Tens of millions stolen, dozens charged, many connected through the same networks. When a sitting member of Congress represents that district, scrutiny comes with the job. That scrutiny does not equal hate, it equals responsibility.
About Ilhan Omar, Donald Trump has slammed Ilhan Omar, saying she does nothing but complain during a speech in Pennsylvania.
That's for Minnesota, you know. That's called the great big Minnesota scam with one of the dumbest governors ever in history.
Donald Trump also taking aim at Tim Walz there. But Jeff, this comes amid questions about how much Ilhan Omar knew about this massive fraud scandal in Minnesota. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think she knew a lot about it. I think Ilhan Omar is a fraud because we know that she married her brother, that she is someone that has allegiance to Somalia and not to the United States of America. Again, she's another person that has vile comments constantly about President Trump. She's part of this whole left-wing leadership of the Democratic Party. They're all, getting behind her and supporting her now that President Trump is attacked.
Instead of addressing concerns directly, Omar often frames criticism as bigotry or distraction. That approach might rally supporters, but it leaves unanswered questions hanging in the air. Voters notice who engages and who deflects. The resurfaced video struck a nerve because it reinforced doubts people already had. Tone matters, language matters, allegiance matters. Elected officials represent the United States, not causes, not foreign governments, not activist movements. When rhetoric blurs that line, backlash follows. Political allies rushing to defend her only amplify the issue. They turn valid concerns into culture war talking points rather than dealing with facts. That strategy keeps the controversy alive longer than any clip ever could. What people are reacting to now feels cumulative. Years of comments, years of dismissive responses, years of unanswered questions. The video acts as a catalyst, not the cause. This moment shows how quickly narrative control slips when trust erodes. Once that happens, every resurfaced clip lands harder. Every past statement gets re-examined. Every reaction becomes evidence. Ilhan Omar does not face outrage because of one video. She faces outrage because many Americans feel she stopped listening long ago. When leaders refuse to engage honestly, the public eventually speaks louder. And judging by the reaction unfolding right now, that reckoning has already started.
Do you want to respond to that? Do you know what he is referring to?
I really don't, and I don't think the secretary himself understands what he's referring to. We obviously had people who were able to donate to our campaign that were involved. We sent that money back a couple years ago. And actually, I was one of the first members of Congress to send a letter to the Secretary of Ag asking them to look into what I thought was a reprehensible fraud that was occurring within the program.
What you just watched explains why this resurfaced moment carries weight today. The response sounds calm on the surface, yet it leaves gaps that matter. When a sitting member of Congress says she does not understand what federal officials reference, then immediately acknowledges campaign donations tied to a massive fraud case, people hear inconsistency. Voters expect clarity when public money disappears. They expect precision when billions vanish. What they heard instead felt rehearsed and incomplete. Sending money back years later does not erase the original connection. It raises another question. How did those donations pass scrutiny in the first place? Campaigns vet donors. Compliance teams exist for that reason. Returning funds after exposure signals reaction rather than prevention. That distinction matters when trust already feels fragile. This fraud did not involve loose change. Prosecutors called it the largest COVID welfare theft in the country. Over $1 billion meant for hungry children and struggling families vanished while oversight failed. When leadership sits near that failure, explanations carry weight. Deflection weakens confidence. Viewers can sense when answers aim to close a conversation rather than address it. Notice the language carefully. Responsibility shifts quickly. Systems failed. Alarms existed. Letters were sent. Investigations continue. Every sentence moves accountability outward. None moves inward. That pattern fuels skepticism, especially among constituents who watch their state become a national headline for corruption. People also notice timing. This video resurfaces while scrutiny intensifies. It resurfaces while investigators expand inquiries. It resurfaces while public patience thins. Old clips resurface when new facts give them meaning. Context transforms memory into evidence of pattern. There is also a political calculation visible here. Acknowledging fraud without accepting proximity protects position. It preserves narrative control. Yet audiences today respond differently than they did years ago. They ask fewer questions about intent and more about outcomes. Outcomes shape credibility. The frustration viewers feel comes from missed accountability, not identity. Fraud harms everyone. It drains resources. It damages communities. It hardens suspicion toward programs that help vulnerable families. Leaders connected to those programs carry added responsibility to confront failure directly. This moment also highlights why panic feels like the wrong word and pressure feels like the right one. Pressure exposes habits. Pressure reveals instincts. Under pressure, leaders either lean into transparency or retreat into process language. The public heard process language. That explains why outrage spread quickly. It explains why reactions intensified rather than faded. People sense a disconnect between the scale of harm and the tone of response. When that gap appears, trust erodes fast.
Should not impugn an entire community of thousands of people. Okay, I want to make that very clear. President Trump has used this fraud to make rather, to me, shockingly bigoted comments about Somalis in general, including you, but the entire Somali community in Minnesota. He did it yesterday and he did it again today. Let's run some of that.
These Somalians have taken billions of dollars out of our country. They've taken billions and billions of dollars. They have a representative, Ilhan Omar, who they say married her brother. She should be thrown the hell out of our country. And most of those people, they have destroyed Minnesota. She should not be, and her friends shouldn't be allowed. Frankly, they shouldn't even be allowed to be congresspeople, okay? They shouldn't even be allowed to be congresspeople because they don't represent the interests of our country.
Let's start with what Donald Trump said about Ilhan Omar, because that's the spark she uses every single time pressure builds. Trump's remarks were loud, inflammatory, and intentionally provocative. He framed Omar as un-American, tied her identity to fraud, and questioned her place in Congress. That rhetoric dominates headlines for a reason. It's explosive, and it gives Omar exactly what she needs when scrutiny tightens. Watch what happens next.
It's pretty shocking to hear it, although I don't know how shocked you are at this point anymore. But Somali immigrants, in general, you in particular have been the target of his attacks for a long time. What's your response?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not shocked because we know that the president oftentimes resorts to very bigoted, xenophobic, Islamophobic, racist rhetoric when he is trying to scapegoat and deflect from the actual failures that he has himself. We know that this administration has not fulfilled the majority of the promises that they've made, whether it is bringing costs down, whether it is the tariffs that are decimating businesses in the United States, whether it is the possible war crimes that his defense secretary is committing. And so to me, it is important for us, one, to remind folks that we are Americans. We're not going anywhere, and we will continue to be in this country. And two, that Minnesotans are resilient, and we will continue to thrive.
What is the practical impact when a president of the United States demonizes an entire group of people based on ethnicity? And again, you can point to any ethnic group and find dozens of people in that ethnic group who are committing a particular crime.
Instead of staying on the substance of the questions around fraud, oversight, and accountability, Omar pivots. She reframes the entire conversation around bigotry, fear, and victimhood. The focus shifts from billions in stolen taxpayer money to Trump's language, from systems failing under Democratic leadership to how his words make communities feel unsafe. That pivot is not accidental, it's strategic. Now connect this to the earlier clips we walked through. In the first interview, when asked directly about people tied to her campaign being involved in the largest COVID welfare fraud case in the country, Omar claimed confusion. Then she acknowledged the donations. Then she said the money was returned. Then she emphasized that she wrote letters and called for investigations. Every step pushed responsibility outward. Systems failed. Others acted. Processes broke. Her role stayed framed as distant and reactive. In the second interview, that same pattern repeats, only faster. Fraud questions come up again. She acknowledges the scale. She discusses indictments. She talks about third-party administrators and rushed programs. Guardrails missing, oversight gaps. Once more, no personal accountability, no reflection on proximity, influence, or leadership responsibility. Then Trump enters the conversation, and everything shifts. Suddenly, the fraud story becomes an identity story. This is the connective tissue across all these appearances. When the topic stays on governance, answers grow vague. When the topic turns to rhetoric, answers grow sharp and emotional. Omar excels at reframing criticism as persecution. That skill has protected her politically for years, but it also prevents serious reckoning. Here's the problem. Two things can be true at the same time. Trump's rhetoric can be reckless, and Omar can still face legitimate questions. One does not cancel the other. Yet every time scrutiny approaches her role, the conversation gets dragged into a culture war where facts drown in outrage. Viewers are starting to notice that pattern. They notice how often fraud becomes deflection, how often systems get blamed while leadership stays untouched, how often criticism gets labeled as hate before it gets answered. That recognition explains why old videos suddenly feel relevant again. They show consistency, not growth, not transparency, consistency and avoidance. This is not about her identity, it's about trust. Public officials handle influence, money, and oversight. When fraud on this scale erupts in their backyard, proximity matters, tone matters, clarity matters. Saying "I sent a letter" does not resolve systemic collapse. Trump's attacks give Omar cover. They also lower the bar. But leadership is measured above that bar, not beneath it. Voters watching this unfold are connecting the dots themselves. They see a pattern of redirection. They see accountability diluted into rhetoric. That's why this moment feels different. Not because Trump spoke, he always does, but because people are listening past the noise now, and they're asking what keeps getting left unanswered. This story sticks because patterns do not disappear with time. When leaders dodge accountability and hide behind outrage, trust erodes. Voters are watching more closely now, and unanswered questions only grow louder the longer they are ignored.